Hi, everybody. This is A7X Fan Ben, and this is Pirates CSG podcast number 46. And we have a very special guest today because I'm going to talk with Tony Vigil, screen name Piranha, who was the original rules arbitrator before Woelf took over. How are you tonight?
Good. How are you doing?
Great. Very exciting. So, how did you get your start in Pirates CSG? Like, what's your origin
Wow.
story with it?
So, how I got involved with Pirates was I pushed myself into WizKids by way of Crimson Skies. Um, so it's kind of a long story. I went into a game store. I found a game on the shelf called Crimson Skies by FASA, and it looked really cool. So I thought I wanted to get into this, but it was already a dead game. And somehow I managed to find a link in the very early days of the forums. They have two sets of forums at WizKids, or they used to, anyways. One of them was for developers, and one was for the public. And I came across a forum posting about Crimson Skies, and I thought, oh, okay, so this new company must be doing it. I didn't know that it was Jordan Weissman. I didn't know anything about WizKids really. I mean, I had played around with Mage Knight a little bit. Hero Clicks wasn't my thing, but I thought it was an interesting thing that they were getting ready to. They're working on doing some play test stuff. So I called them. I just called WizKids and asked to speak to Jordan Weissman. And the lovely woman on the phone asked me who I was and what it was about. She put me on hold, and then Jordan popped on and we talked a little bit. And he said, "How did you find out about Crimson Skies?" And I said, "Well, it's in your forums." And he says, "Well, not the public forums." So I had kind of found something that wasn't supposed to be made public.
Wow.
So we talked a little bit more, and he asked me if I'd be interested in play testing. Because I had just had so much enthusiasm for it. So I thought, oh, this is cool. You know, I get to play test one of these new games that's not out yet. And so I started that way. That's how I got into doing stuff with WizKids. I worked on play testing with Crimson Skies, and then they brought me into the group for Mech Warrior, and then I was asked to well, I guess I made a lot of noise in the Pirates forums too, because I was doing a lot of the play testing for that long before it was out as well. And they asked me to if I'd like to be the rules arbitrator, since I seem to know, you know, a lot of the ins and outs of how that stuff worked. And that's kind of how that came about. And I had a great working relationship with Mike Mulvihill, who was the lead designer. You know, anytime questions would come up, we'd go back and forth on them. So I was kind of more or less, you know, the interface between him and the player base.
Yep.
So it was a lot of fun. It was a very cool job.
Very nice. That's really cool. So you probably joined with kids around 2003, or at least some year before Pirates.
No, probably 2001,
Nice.
2002, something
Yep.
like that. Yeah, well, let's see, it had to be after 2001. I'm trying to remember where I was living at the time. I think I was already living with my wife. Um, so yeah, it kind of took up a lot more time than my wife would have liked. But you know, I had a real passion for it, so she seemed to think that, you know, well, I'm not doing anything bad, so it was a good thing. So yeah. No, but I really enjoyed the community. It was a fantastic community, as anybody from back then can tell you, Woelf or anybody else. It was a great community to be a part of.
Yep. Awesome. That's great to hear. And that's continued because even today we get almost no trolls or spamming and stuff like that. So the community today is still really healthy and somewhat vibrant. Obviously not as big as it used to be with the game going
You
out
know,
of print a while back, but it's still a pretty great community to be in. Definitely.
when you contacted me back in, I guess it was August or
Yep.
July, I was shocked that there was um, still an ongoing concern, and it's still. I'm really kind of baffled as to why they don't continue producing it. If I own a game store now, and when I first had my game store, I could sell so much product because it was such an easy sell, and I was really good at teaching it. And it was an easy product for me to get. And then all of a sudden they kind of shriveled up and disappeared. And that was around 2008, 2009, 2010 is finally when we just couldn't get any more of it.
Yeah.
But I would buy as much as I could, and I could sell through it like quick, very easily.
Nice. That's really awesome to hear. Where did
so I'm glad
Yeah, you go.
I'm sorry?
No, you go ahead.
Okay. No, I was saying I'm so glad there are people like you that still keep things like this going. So thank you.
Yep. Yeah. And thank you for being on the podcast voluntarily. It's awesome to talk to people from the origin days, basically. It's really awesome to hear that perspective. Where did the username Piranha come from, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, I've used that on a lot of different things, but I just I had this little drawing of a piranha fish that it was easy for me to draw, and it became kind of like I don't want to say I was like I'm not a graffiti artist or anything like that, but it was like my little tag, sort of. It was an easy little fish that I drew, and I used that picture as my picture in the forums too. I don't really know why I came up with that. I think I just drew it one day, and I thought, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. And I figured piranhas have to do with water, and seemed right for a piratey theme, sort of. I think for a while it was called Captain Piranha, but I can't remember for sure. Woelf could tell you maybe better than I could at this point.
Interesting.
I just don't remember. I don't remember much from back then anymore.
Yeah, that's all good. Yep.
I mean, I still remember a lot of the fun stuff. I mean, going to the conventions and meeting everybody, that was awesome. That was probably the best part of doing that.
Yep.
Is meeting the people in person at the conventions and getting to play with them and run events for them. I've met a lot of great people through that experience, and I still have a lot of friends through it.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's what Mike Salinger talked about. He talked about how hearing from the fans and how amazed they were was one of the best parts of it, one of his best memories of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, Piranha is a cool name. I think it would be a good name for a ship. There aren't any ships in the game.
There wasn't. I mean, we talked about it, and
yep.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't remember why we never did. They asked me if I wanted to at one point. I thought, it would be cool. I just didn't really. Maybe it's such a long time ago. I think I was supposed to come up with the stats for it, and I just couldn't come up with it.
Yep.
So I thought, it's not that big a deal.
Yeah. I'm thinking,
but it would have been cool. I mean,
yeah.
I'd still have that ship if I did. I guarantee you, I would have a copy of it if it existed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It seems like it would be like a feisty two-masted schooner with good speed or something, good cannons. Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, something like that. Even, I don't know. I'd even take a one mast sloop kind of thing. That would be cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Nice. So, how did the rules arbitrator position come into existence in the first place?
Well, there were rules arbitrators for all the different games.
Yep.
And actually, to be honest, I don't even know if they came about before I was brought on board or not. But when I was brought on board, I did manage to become friends with the other rules arbitrators. So when we go to conventions, we would often hang out together. There were 5 levels of envoys, and rules arbitrators were at the top. Those were the level 5 envoys, and there were level 4s. Those are the guys who go to all the conventions, and they sort of manage over all the 3s, 2s, and 1s. And you have the 3s, who might be like a regional, statewide area. 2s would be more like, the stores within 100-mile radius. And then you had the level 1s, which were only at individual stores. So, I knew the other rules arbitrators through that process, and I don't know how it came about really, as other than they just asked me if I was interested in doing that.
Yep. Awesome.
Of course, I'm going to say yes. It was awesome.
Yep. Yeah, that's really cool.
Having input was, at first I was really thinking it was going to be just a mouthpiece for the public to say, "Hey, Mike, they want to know about this ship and this rule," and then he would answer it. But it didn't. It turned out to be much more in depth than that. It would be more about having a couple 1-hour discussions every week about what's going on in the community, what ships do people like, what rules need to be changed. I had to kind of shrink down the rules to fit within that stupid little rule book.
Oh yeah.
So wording. I never realized how much wording matters. until you have to put it into a format that everybody can print, or that they can make viable cost wise. You have to fit it within so many pages, and that text in that print was really tiny, but you have to condense everything down to the fewest words possible, but still have it say what it really means.
Yep.
So that's kind of what the rules arbitrator job was at that point. It was really about fine tuning those things. A good example is the oarsman.
Yep.
The oarsman has no cost, and they don't take any space on your ship. So hypothetically, you could have a billion of them. It's kind of strange to think about that now, that was actually a problem. When you play test things and everybody behaves, nobody. Why would you take a whole bunch of oarsmen? Well, if you have, I can't remember the name of the pirate captain who could throw them overboard.
Yeah, Captain Blackheart. Yep.
Blackheart. He could throw people overboard, and so people would come with a whole big stack of oarsmen, and him.
Yep.
And put him on an English ship with a couple other guys to make the ship go like L plus L plus L plus S plus S plus S, and fire umpteen number of times and just keep doing things because he had unlimited oarsmen. Yeah. So at some point you have to start putting little rule simplifications to make sure that everybody understands, like, well, you're limited to one of each, or whatever the case might be. But yet all that still has to fit in that same little book. So you have to start paring down all that other stuff. And that kind of got thrown to me in a way, not in a bad way. I mean, but I was kind of shocked that so much of that was coming my way, because this wasn't like, not like I was an employee getting a paycheck or anything. It was more out of love of the game that I was doing it.
Okay, interesting. Yep.
So, to give that much responsibility to someone, I think this shows a lot of respect for their community.
Yeah, absolutely. That's interesting. So oarsmen used to be free, like they costed 0 points?
Yep.
Interesting. Yeah, because eventually that got changed to 1 for the game, which I think is good. So they wouldn't be unlimited. But yeah, interesting.
Yeah, they used to be free, and there's a lot of other little things that you think back. I don't know if you know what the rule come about is.
I remember that one. Yep, from the original.
You do remember that? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that came about because that rule came into place because we used playing cards to test the game.
Okay.
And you couldn't very well travel through the card. We didn't think of it in terms of the shape of the ship that you couldn't travel through, but rather you couldn't travel through a card, so you had to have some way to turn the ship around.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense.
And that became absolutely useless once you had a 3D model.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when they talked about how that was eliminated, that rule got eliminated, so yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of, I remember when it got eliminated, where they asked me what I thought. It's an absolutely useless rule. Nobody will ever use it for any reason. I came up with scenarios, dumb as they may be, where you might have to do it. Like if, for whatever reason, you were parked at an island and I took 2 ships and parked them on either side of your ship, then you couldn't move.
Yeah, I've had that exact thing happen. But then you could
argue, like, well, how does the ship rotate 180 degrees in between that space? So, I mean, it didn't matter anyways.
Yeah.
So,
there were... Yeah, that's funny, because I've had that exact same thing happen in a game. I had a 5-master in a game in like 2014, I think, and she had 2 ships ram either side of her bow, and then there was another off to the side. So I actually asked Woelf in the rules thread at that time how to play it. So, but yeah, the turning arcs actually are quite lenient, so that made the call-out rule pretty irrelevant for the most part.
Yeah, but I mean, there were ways to trap ships in that, with 2 little ships if you wanted to. I just never found it to be a viable strategy necessarily.
Yeah. Especially
somebody could come up with something, because you guys are awful smart at coming up with things that befuddle the rules people. It happens so often that it just always amazed me
Yep.
how often things would come up and you go, what? Why would you even think to do that? And, they're the weirdest things. I can't even think of anything really offhand. I just remember that horrible scenario of one of the first events we had at Gen Con or Origins. I don't remember which one. Somebody had, like I said, a big old stack of oarsmen, and I had to change the rules that weekend to make it work because it was just so stupidly broken. And it wasn't one person who brought it, because it was brought up in the forums. A lot of people had that same build.
Wow.
And it was, everybody was kind of like mad at everybody else, like, oh, that's stupid. Well, you brought the same thing. So yeah, but I was gonna win. And so I had to change things on the spot, kind of.
Oh
But
man. Yeah, that's
yeah, there's
funny.
some funny things that happen. I mean, you can play test a game to death, and there's always going to be somebody who's going to break it.
Yeah, that's exactly what Wolf has talked about too. I remember him talking about how power gamers will always find a way to exploit the exploitable parts of the rules, and that's
Right.
exactly what happened every set, basically.
Every set, it doesn't matter. You think you have it locked airtight, and you kind of sign off, and then you go, yeah, everything looks good to me. I don't think there's any problems. And then day one, people have all kinds of things that just blow your mind that that's even an issue.
Yeah.
And I will say, more often than not, it has to do with wording. Not so much that the rule's bad, but the wording has too much leeway, and so the rules lawyers can read into it certain ways, and you can't argue. You can argue that their interpretation is wrong, but you can't fault them for being able to make that argument. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I've had the same. I've almost had not arguments with Wolf, but I've kind of. There are things still today in the pirate code that I disagree with somewhat,
Really?
or there's like
what?
Well, there's like loopholes and things like that like based on the wording, some things are legal that I don't think should be, or sometimes
Really?
things are like overly fair that make the game a little bit less fun. Not like the broken stuff, but one main thing is like there's this weird explorer loophole where if you have a helmsman and explorer and you use both to dock at a wild island and explore it with the explorer crew, there's a weird there's like the free crew transfer allows you to switch the crew out on the island to dump the explorer and then takes an extra coin, which seems to contradict the rule that you can't dump an explorer when you're using its ability to take the extra coin. So it's kind of there's like a loophole. That's one of my least favorite ones, but anyway, it's kind of just gaming.
I vaguely remember that one. I don't even remember some things that they're just hard to fix.
Yeah.
Not going to please. Here's the thing: you can't please everybody.
Yep.
Yeah. You fix it for one person, and someone else will break it a whole different way. So it really doesn't matter.
Exactly.
At one point in time, we were going to work on an advanced set of rules for pirates that was going to have more realistic battles, more realistic movement, much thicker rule book. And it was something I'm sure I can talk about this now. At the time, I couldn't say anything when I was there, but Steve Jackson was going to be involved with it. And so I was going to get to work directly with Steve Jackson and Mike Mulvihill to create this game. And I was so excited because, Pirates kind of came out of, a little bit anyways, if not completely out of Evil Stevie's pirate game that used to take place at the conventions for many, many years. He would do a Pirates game, basically the same thing, but in bigger form with big Lego ships.
Yep.
Anyway, long story short, I killed it because I thought about it and I realized, this is a beer and pretzels game, and no matter what we do, no matter what rule set we come up with, we're just going to have the headache of all the people who nitpick at rules and complain about this, that, or the other, and also break the rules, or bend them to their will. And I voiced my opinion about that, and everybody in the phone calls it, yeah, you're probably right. Let's just not do it. Shoot, I screwed myself over.
Interesting. Yeah, that's really fascinating. It reminds me of what you messaged me on Facebook about too, which we can get into later if you want.
Sure.
Very interesting. Okay. So other than Mike Mulvihill, which WizKids employees did you work directly with, if any?
There were a couple others. I as I told you before we started this, I can't remember their names. I can picture them. One of them, Wolf would remember him probably. He used to do the not Hero Escaper. There was a Clicks web page for HeroClix.
Yep.
He owned that. I just can't remember. Matthew Goddard.
Okay.
I worked. He was kind of like one of the people who was like a lead in play testing and rules creation for a long time. He worked on Mech Warrior and Crimson Skies. I think he was the lead designer in Crimson Skies, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong about that. And Kelly Benia.
Yep.
There were a few others that their names are going to come to me right after I get off this call. I'm
Yeah,
pretty
I know
sure.
how you feel. Yep.
Yeah, but I mean, like I said, there are so many fond people, fond memories of people that were there all the time. Ray was always there. I can't remember his last name. I think he's either. I'm not sure if he's a cousin or an uncle to Ray Weir. He's related to Jordan. I just don't know exactly how.
Yeah. Interesting.
Anyway, yeah, he's a nice guy. I mean, they were all really nice people. It was
Yep.
just really fun to be part of that group.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. What is your favorite rule in Pirates CSG?
Oh,
If you have one.
favorite rule. I don't know if I could come up with a rule that's my favorite. I can think of ones that we fixed or nerfed. I suppose we talked about the oarsmen. I think I really like the idea that those the characters have the special ability and they're like one per ship kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably my favorite rule. And that was something that was not originally in the rules themselves. I added that that there was only one per ship because there were so many ways to break things with extra oarsmen and extra all the different. I mean, there's so many ways to really unbalance a ship.
So you mean,
I just didn't like it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you mean the links then, probably, right? Like linked crew and ships. Yep. Okay, cool.
Right.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you have a least favorite rule that you remember, even if it was
the
fixed?
thing. That was always. I just hated that thing. I would hate it so much I wouldn't use it even if I had to. I just like I can't move.
Yep.
I just thought it was dumb.
Yeah.
It's just the dumbest rule ever.
Yep.
And I don't know. I mean, I understood why it was there. I just didn't like it, and I was glad to get rid of it.
Yep. Yeah, in the past I've only used the Explorer loophole that I talked about only in like competitive games because I don't really use it in casual games, stuff like that. Only in like tournaments and things of that nature. But did you have any ideas for the game that got implemented, like ships, crew, or treasure, or like rules as you said?
No, I was more focused on making sure the rules were sound and get rid of any of the ambiguity that was out there, or try to anyways. It's very hard. But you do the best you can with what you have. Like I said, you're not going to please everybody. And I'm sure Wolf would probably remember some of these people. There were a few people who gave us grief on a regular basis, and I would be as nice as I could. And I think I banned one person in the whole time I did this. I think there's only one person I just booted out of the group because it was so toxic. But in general, you're like I said, you're always going to have people who really push the boundaries of all these things.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So when did you stop being the rules arbitrator when Woelf came along?
Well, Wolf had been in part of the community, big part of the community for a long time. I don't remember. I was thinking about that this evening. I can't remember whether I stepped down on my own or if it was more of a things that run their course kind of deal for both. I don't remember, to be honest. I feel like I stepped down. I might be wrong about that at this point. But I was asked.
Yeah, that sounds familiar from what Wolf has said, I think.
What, that I was pushed out or stepped down?
No, stepped down. I think he
Yeah,
was vague
I think
about
I
it, but
stepped
yeah.
down. It might have just been that, I from I don't remember what year it was. What year did Wolf say he took over?
I can't remember. I think it was 2006 or 2007. We
Okay,
actually
so
lost. Yeah.
I would have been married for a couple years at that point. I was probably more focused on, you know, my family as opposed to all these extracurricular things,
Yep.
possibly. Whatever way it happened, I don't. It was on good terms. That's all I can tell you.
Yep.
And they asked me who I thought should take over or who would be a good candidate, and I had only one person in mind. That was Wolf.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome.
So, that was. I pretty much got to name a successor, and I asked him if you want to do it. And he go, yeah. So, good fit.
Yeah, that is awesome. Yeah, that's perfect fit, without a doubt. And yeah, he has said about how Wolf was he was into the game since the very start. He's always been a gamer and a board gamer his whole life. So indeed.
Yeah.
What do
I,
you think?
I
Oh no, you go ahead.
I was gonna say I'm not even 100% sure I ever actually met him in person at one of the conventions. If I did, I'm sorry, Wolf, that I forgot. And if I didn't, I'd still love to meet you at some point. Whenever that ever happens, that'd be cool.
Yep. Awesome. What do you think is the hardest thing to understand about the Pirate CSG rules?
Oh
Whether it's
gosh, I don't. There's so little that is hard to understand. It's so simple.
Yep.
Maybe the hardest thing to understand is how the L and the S work. I mean, well, I think it's easy to understand, but I remember, having to show people how that works. And I think what a lot of people had problems with, at least when I ran events in my store, um, was understanding that it didn't matter what order they came in. If it L plus L plus S, you could do the S first and then the two L's or whatever. But um, I don't know. Maybe the cannon firing and losing mass, that might be the thing that actually confused people.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had people wonder sometimes they've wondered if they have to draw a line of fire to the opponent's mass where
Right.
it's actually any part on their ship. So
Any part of the ship, correct.
yep.
Well, I can tell you right now, the thing that always came up, without a doubt, with every new player is what that die on the mast meant.
Yes.
Is that what I'm firing, or is that what you need to hit?
Yep.
And do you need to hit that or higher, or is it higher than that or lower? Those kind of questions. That comes
Exactly.
up, and right now, I could probably answer it and be 50-50 sure that I'm right.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
one of
that's
the
the one.
yeah, some of the basics even around the actions are another point for new players at least that I've
Yeah.
taught. Like the distinction between moving and exploring where um sometimes they don't understand that you need an explorer to move and then explore an island on the same turn. Sometimes they want
Right.
to do it without the explorer or they're not sure when they can explore versus when they can't, things like that. But
So you have to refresh my memory. The Explorer allowed you to do it on the same turn, correct?
exactly, yep.
But you could do an Explorer if you're already there. Yeah,
Exactly, yep.
it's coming back to me.
Yep, yeah.
Now I got to go buy some.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's still a bunch out there on eBay and some other sites too. So
Yeah, it's actually pretty. I think you can buy them for like $5 a pack on eBay.
yeah, yeah. Some of the
Which is
sets
not
are cheap.
terrible.
Yeah. Some of them are. That's a fun one. That's a fun topic to get into. But yeah, the market has become more expensive over the past like 3 to 4 years.
It's
I was
yeah.
I was very happy to collect a lot from 2011 to 2014 when I would get ships for less than $1 a piece very often. Some packs were like $1 or $2 each. Nowadays,
Wow,
usually
that's awesome.
more. Yeah, it depreciated in value a bit, and now it's actually come back up, even as the community has very slowly shrunk this past decade, basically. And nowadays, some of the sets have appreciated in value quite a lot. So South China Seas packs sometimes auction for like $8 a pack or more. So
Wow.
that one is
Okay.
that's the rarest set, of course. So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah. Oh, I wish I don't know why they don't print. I mean, I know why they don't print it. And this is something that comes up in our store all the time for all games. Why a game gets canceled. It just comes down to the bean counters. The guys who look at the money. If it doesn't make a certain amount of profit, then they can't do it.
yep,
But I have a hard time believing that there was a downturn in popularity. That's not what happened. I think maybe it just got more expensive for them to make them.
That's exactly what I've heard too. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's what Tiffany O'Brien talked about on the podcast this past summer.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Tiffany.
Yeah, Tiffany was on, and she talked about how the demand was still strong through the final sets, even as there was a reverse power creep. So like the game pieces
Yeah.
weren't as good for gameplay in the final sets, especially like Fire and Steel, but there was
Yeah.
still demand there. And yeah, the financial crisis hit 2008, and then WizKids the same year folded up.
Yeah.
So that was a huge event, obviously.
Yeah, and I foolishly opened a store in 2008.
Is that the
So
one you're still running though?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah,
Well, there you
we
go.
pushed through it. We pushed through it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And 2011 was our worst year, and that's around the same time that we stopped. Um, there was a shortage for us from our distributors. They ran out, and they weren't getting any more, so I couldn't get it, and that makes it difficult.
Absolutely. Yep. Do you remember the hardest rules question you had to answer?
Not the actual rule. I can still vaguely imagine the conversation in my head and what a headache it gave me, but I couldn't recall it offhand.
Yeah.
That again, it was probably one of those 2 or 3 troublemakers who, I don't think it was the one I banned, but it was certainly an ongoing conversation. I wouldn't even call it an argument really, and it wasn't even. I never felt like I had the ironclad, what I say goes kind of thing, because I listened to the community, and if it made more sense to do what everybody wanted, then that's what would happen. But most of the time, things got solved pretty quick and easy, and part of that might just be because I was so immersed in it. I would spend at least 2 hours a day playing at work.
Nice.
When I shouldn't have been, but that was something we always had out on the table to play, and it was always fun.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I could work there. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, I mean, when I had the store, I couldn't do it, but when I had a regular real job, we had a lot of downtime at one of my the locations I worked at. I worked at a naval base as a contractor, and when things were slow, we'd go, yeah, let's go play a few rounds of Pirates.
Yeah,
and we do.
That is awesome. Yeah, some of the hardest rules I might qualify as one of those troublemakers nowadays because I've probably asked Woelf more rules questions since I got into the online community in 2011 since anybody else, I would say for sure. And some of them, I mean, you can't stump him because he knows the game so well. But there are some where he said that some of the questions I've asked him, probably like 3 or 5 over the years, he said he doesn't recall ever being asked like certain really weird specific questions that like the craziest ones are the ones that relate super specific game pieces to each other, like a specific sea monster, how it interacts with like abandoned crew, the unique treasure, stuff like that. It's just totally.
Oh yeah, do they go overboard or there are things that I think I've probably come across everything possible in my tenure, but it's hard to say. I'm not sure what happened after I left. I kind of dropped out of the whole scene, the whole forum scene, and everything. It was kind of a bittersweet thing for me. It's not like I didn't want to be there. I just you get busy with other parts of your life, and things kind of have to fall up to the wayside somewhat.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Yep. Yeah, Woelf has actually upkept the pirate code quite well. He actually did an update in December 2016, which is the latest version of it. And I think part of the reason for that was because of the questions I had asked that like came up that hadn't come up before, so we had to add stuff to it. So it's at 64.
Has he added any rules?
Not adding rules, just clarifying existing ones. So yeah, nothing's been added since Savage Shores came out in 2008, November 08. So yeah.
Right.
At least it can't be official because WizKids isn't.
Oh, of course not. But I mean, a lot of communities they continue with like a living rules.
Yeah.
And add to it and subtract from it or whatever.
Absolutely.
I've talked to you about the RPG that came out of it.
Yep.
uh, for our players in my store, and I really, after so many years of thinking, oh yeah, I should do that. I've started to write it down, so I will be sending you a copy of that as soon as I can get it, kind of formalized, a
Yeah.
bit better than it is. But a lot of things we did there, I wish were part of the Spanish Main Pirates of the Spanish Main rule set. I won't get into specifics here, but it made the game far more interesting.
Yep.
Well, as an example, so if you wanted to fire on my ship, it wasn't just a matter of you being close enough. You had to roll a die to see if you could spot my ship, and it had to do with the number of masts that a ship had originally. So a 5-mast ship is easier to spot than a 1-mast ship, and you had to roll. I guess you had to roll that number or less. I think that's what it was to spot it, and you had to be within range. But if you didn't spot me, then you couldn't shoot at me.
Yep. Yeah, that does make
So
sense. Yep.
it made the game more interesting. I mean, there were times where you would just get beat down by a big ship for no other reason than it just was worth way more points than yours, and it could just really fast come up there and hit you, and you're like, well, this is hardly fair. But what we were doing with so many players and so many ships on the board, I had to do something to kind of streamline that in a way that made sense for everybody, so that it wasn't just I don't really know how else I can really put it. It made the game more strategic, and it gave you chances to get away without losing mast, possibly.
Yeah. Very interesting.
And so the stories you could tell were really cool. Like, oh yeah, the big 5-mast ship came up. We saw it because I could, if you roll to spot my ship, I can roll to spot yours.
Yep.
And if I don't spot you, you get first shot at me without we did simultaneous cannon shots. Yep. So it's not that you shot at me and I lost mast and then I shot back with what was remaining. We both rolled all our dice and then removed mast.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the house rules people have talked about. Simultaneous fire along with return fire, of course. Yeah, there's a ton of house rules.
Yeah, and that's a lot of house rules we used in our big table RPG version, and that was one of them.
Yep, awesome. Yeah, I've come up with my own basic rules that changes a little bit of the original, full complete game rules of Pirates CSG, and then I've played a bunch of huge campaign games where there's resources and like different rules and things like that, and extra rules for colonies and whatnot, and like combat rules that make the game more realistic. Like you need 2 hits to eliminate every mass, things like that. So I've played around with a lot of house rules, and it does make the game better almost always, as long as you use the right ones, of course. But that's not hard to figure out.
Another really cool rule is to have ports that are only friendly to certain factions.
Yep.
So if you're not friendly with it, we just used cannon fire to if you rolled enough hits, then you could fake your way in, sort of. Which then became, you could be disguised, basically.
Yeah.
So you get to use that port, and you get to fix your ship and buy other stuff, more crew members, or buy another ship. You could only do that in these ports. So we had some really cool stuff.
Absolutely.
And like I said, I really want to put that into writing in a way that, can be, it's clearly, came out as Pirates of the Spanish Main, but it doesn't have to be that at all. But in the long run, we were using the pieces to play something completely different.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, things get adapted over time and things change.
Yeah,
that does sound familiar to some of the stuff I've used in different house rule sets, like military and trading ports, something like that. And then for those, or at least for the trading port, you could dock and trade more effectively if you had the parley keyword on your ship, which came out with the Pirates of the Caribbean set. So that was a cool way to introduce like a house rule that combines the existing abilities. So I love that. That's one of my favorite things about the game. It's just the possibilities are just endless, and I've created a rule set that's like really intense with like government and things like that, with the help of Xerix, of course, one of the other most passionate members of the community. So it's a crazy how far the rabbit hole goes. Basically, it's awesome.
So here's another thing you can add to your house rules. Use a set of playing cards to give each ship an initiative.
Yep, I think I've heard of that. Yeah.
So I have and this was totally by happenstance. I just happened to pick a piratey deck of, it was called Peg Leg Pete, I think. You can get it from a company called, I can't remember. I'm going to send you the link to the company where you can buy this deck at. It's an awesome deck of cards. It comes with 4 jokers they're not jokers, they're sea monsters.
Nice.
But they're the jokers of the deck. And it's a very cool design to the faces and everything. So as I told you before, we had anywhere between 8 and 16 players on any given weekend that wanted to play Pirates, and they wanted to play a big game, and I had no way of really controlling it outside of doing something with initiative so that I could just get people going in order. Well, just going around the table. So I just grabbed that deck, shuffled it, and I started giving everybody cards, and I said, we're going to go high to low, aces high, or ace you could pick whenever you want to go, but everybody's go high to low. And then somebody said, oh, I got a sea monster. And I thought, oh, crap, I left the jokers in there. And then I said, oh, well, you have to fight a sea monster. And I just put a sea monster right next to his ship, and he had to deal with that. That was what he had to do on his turn.
Yep.
And then somebody said, well, so that has something. What does the king do? And just real quickly, I said, oh, well, that's the queen, the king of the country that you're not aligned with. He's firing on your ship. And then somebody, ooh, what about the queen? And I said, oh, that's Mother Nature. And I created a table that we rolled a D20 on, and you had some sort of squall or mire or whatever that would just either, suck the wind out of your sails where you couldn't move the next turn, or it would push every ship within a certain range, a certain direction, a certain amount, to screw up where you're going. So there are a lot of really cool things you can do with that to make it that much more interesting and less of a mechanical, okay, my turn, I'm going to move all my ships fire on your ships, your turn, go back and forth like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, there's a ton of stuff at the files section for the game page at Board Game Geek is chock full of awesome stuff. I've only used like a tiny percentage of it, and I've played a ton of games. So, and wind is fun to experiment with too. It's pretty basic. Just get like a compass, and then you can roll a D6 to see where if the wind changes direction each turn. I used that this year in a game a few months ago, and it was fun to revisit without a doubt.
We tried we tried rolling a D10.
Yep.
And having the direction of the wind be the direction it's pointing in, and then having the amount it affected ships based on the level of wind.
Yep.
And that was a cool way to do it too.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Yeah, there's so many house rules. It's just awesome. I love how customizable it is, because I
always loved that game.
Yeah.
It's just something that I'm always going to have a really, really warm spot in my heart for.
Exactly. Yeah, the game's already customizable out of the packs because you can build all sorts of fleets and crew. The combinations are pretty much endless, and then you layer house rules on top of the existing rules, and it just gets totally crazy. But in a fun way. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the next one we already answered. How do the change of rules arbitrators work? But I do see a note there that I wrote. So Woelf, it says he came aboard around September 2006, according to Woelf. So yeah, so about halfway through the game's life of sorts. So, yep.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Yep.
I the funny thing is, it wasn't supposed to last that long. It was only supposed to last for 4 sets.
Oh, okay, interesting. Yeah, I talked with Mike Selinker, and he talked about how, or maybe it was James Ernest. One of them said that going beyond 1 was like a pleasant surprise, that how well it sold and whatnot. So, and then just kept going and going.
Well, I think the most interesting meeting I had with people at WizKids had to do with how can I word this? So with HeroClix, you have the tournament play, and there's a reason why there's organized play. It's not to make all you guys happy. It's so that they can gauge how people are interacting with the product.
Yep.
That's really long and short of it is they gauge how the game's doing based on the number of players that are showing up at different events. So when Pirates first came out, there was no organized play.
Mm-hmm.
It was just, there's some stuff. And so it was selling. You couldn't find it anywhere for the first 2 or 3 sets. It was very hard to find when it was first, the first print run. It was very difficult to find this stuff.
Yep.
And I think it was probably the second set. I don't remember what it was called, but they asked me. It was a very strange call. They said, "What's going on with Pirates?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And they said, "Well, what's going on with it? Are people playing it?" And I said, I can go check. I mean, it's selling out everywhere. And so I started going into stores and asking if they carry it, whether or not, or how much they carry, how much they buy. And without a doubt, almost every single store I went into said, "Oh, yeah, we get it." And it sells out immediately. And I looked around and I said, "When do you guys play?" And he said, "We don't." I said, "What do you mean?" "Well, I mean, what happens?" And he said, "Well, they play in between HeroClix matches. And they play between MechWarrior matches, and they just kind of hang out and play sometimes. But usually they just take it home and play it home." And so that phone call I had, I think it was, might have been Mike Selinker, Mike Mulvihill, Jordan, and a couple other people. They wanted to know why nobody was playing in stores or in events or anything like that, and where the product was going. And it was going to, like, every store had like 4 or 6 people who were buying everything. They buy like a case or a box and will leave nothing for the new people who don't know what it is,
Yeah.
And it was a really strange, thing that they didn't know what was going on with the product. They could see numbers, but it wasn't. They had no way to track it, and that was kind of. And I said, well, maybe you should come up with some ship things and give some to the stores or whatever. And that didn't help out either. I don't think. Just people don't want to play in tournaments in stores.
Huh.
Conventions. We didn't get a lot of people at conventions either.
Huh. Interesting.
I mean, I think, beyond the first event, I think we had somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 people for the first event at the convention. I think it was Gen Con. Might have been, no, I don't think it was Gen Con. I think it was Origins. It wasn't a normal event. What they did was, in your bag of goodies you get for the convention, you got some packs of Pirates and some gold coins. They were out of another game, but you could use these gold coins. I could come over to you and say, "Hey, do you want to play a game of Pirates for one of your gold coins?" You say, "Yeah," and then we play, and I'd collect your gold coin. And then at the end of the weekend, there was a big event. You had to bring, I think it was 100 points of gold. The little plastic gold coins.
Yep.
And that was your entry. And then we just took all of those plastic big coins, the ones that look like gold doubloons, and you just played with other players for them.
Yep.
Just open play. And the prize support wasn't something like, there was no first place, there was no second place. It was a big auction that we had after the tournament was over, or after the event was over, and we auctioned off all of this really cool merch, signed cards. The big thing that went was a huge, it had to be almost 2.5 feet long, a big pirate ship, a wooden pirate ship with, real sails and all the rigging and cannons and all the whole 9 yards.
Yep.
But so the auction would happen and you could bid on it with those plastic coins that you won, the gold rim ones. And what happened was people were being very piratey. They were just paying people for coins or outright stealing them, or otherwise, getting them hook or by crook. And it was interesting. There was a group, I'd call it a consortium of, I don't know, about 6 to 8 players who said, "All right, we're going to all get our stuff together. We're going to buy that and take it into our store, blah, blah, blah." And there was another guy, very good friend of mine. He either paid people for their coins or beat them for the coins or traded stuff for the coins. And he wound up getting that ship. And his friend was with him. I think it was his wife's friend. She said, what are you going to do with that thing? And he's and he kind of thought about it. And I could see in his eyes, like, oh, she's never going to let me bring this home. But it's still on his mantle. So
Nice.
It was very cool. But
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
the most people I ever had otherwise was maybe 32 players.
Okay.
Which isn't a minor amount, but
Oh,
at a
that's great.
convention, I always hoped it would get to like 64 or another big 100-player tournament. It never did. Most of them were like 8 players at a time per event, maybe 16 on average, possibly.
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely heard about that event. It sounds familiar. I think one of them, I don't know if it was the same one. One of them was called Blackheart's Wager, I believe.
Yeah, I think that was it.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna ask you if the coins were metal, but it must have been a different event. It was one of the
No.
Gen Cons.
I'm trying to remember if those ones were metal. Yeah, I think they were.
Yeah, because
Here's the thing.
yeah.
I remember now, the ones that they gave you in your pouch were plastic, and somebody went out and bought the game they came from, or bought them in like a bulk bag at like a party store or something like that, and kind of flooded the market, sort of.
Nice.
So, and people were complaining to me about these things, and I just kind of go, pirate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was about
I
to
thought
say.
this is great the way it's happening because this is exactly what pirates would do. So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, it's
fine with
perfect.
it.
Yeah, I was about
Yeah.
to say at that event, it sounded like from Pirates of the Caribbean, Jack says, "Take what you can, give nothing back" when he's talking with Gibbs, and
Yeah.
or they both say it basically. Um, yeah, that is perfect. I know I've thought about that before. It's like this weird, since the game is all about pirates, it's like this weird justification to act a little bit shady when you're doing this sort of
Yeah,
thing at like tournaments. It's funny though.
and in tournaments, I would often use that if I didn't really have a good answer, or let's see. I'm trying to remember if there was one particular thing that would come up. I can't think of anything offhand, but I have used that as my out if I wasn't sure how to fix it, or otherwise, some things you can't fix on the spot. If everybody's playing by the same rules and it's already happened someplace else on another table, you can't change the rule after that.
Yeah.
So at that point, you kind of have to explain to them, well, we already did it over here, so we're going to allow it, blah, blah, blah. Instead, I just say pirate and say, we're fine with it. And, most of the time people were fine with that. I mean, most of the people who came to play in these events were there to have a good time. We had a few people who were ultra hyper competitive. But in general, it was just a great group of people.
Yep. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I got I think it was on eBay. A handful of years ago, I bought a metal coin that was described as being from either Gen Con 2004 or 2005, I believe. And and yeah, it was cool to get like a piece of Pirates CSG history, even if it was just a piece of stuff from something else unrelated. But
Yeah,
it was cool.
it did. I can't remember the name of the game. It's a piratey game. Not a very good one. It was okay, but that's where those gold coins came from.
Yep.
And they're cool to have. I mean, yeah, I don't have any more of them. I wish I did. Those I gave away as prizes in our events.
Uh-huh.
The ones I did have.
Yep. Yeah, I'm going deep into my pictures archive on my computer. Okay, so that's something else. But anyway, I think one of those auctions had like either a ship that was signed by the game designers, like Mike Selinker and others, or some other merch that was like signed by them, stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. There were framed cards that had signatures by the artist and or the designers, and then sextants and imitation guns. There was probably a sword or two. There were some really cool things. It was all very nautical themed and just a lot of fun. The whole event was great.
Yep. Awesome.
One of the funniest things that happened. So we said 100 points of gold. And we thought, I'm not going to count it. Are you going to count it? I don't want to count it. So we got a scale, And that didn't work because some people were smart and brought a bunch of big point coins, and some people brought all their 1 point coins, and it's hard to weigh that. So after, I don't know, 20 or 30 people, we just said, yeah, that's enough. And threw it into a big box. And we had a huge box full of those coins.
Yeah. I've got like one of the smallish tins that's chock full of the plastic coins, but then I've got a ton of generic crew cards with the coins still in them, so I could fill another couple tins with them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I had several cards full. Yeah.
Yeah. Other than
that was one of the best parts about the game is you could flat pack it.
Yeah. Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, that was awesome.
To get that amount of merchandise in one pack that's only $3.99 MSRP, and then it kind of explodes onto your table as 3D ships and coins and islands, it is pretty wild. And the little tiny rule books, of course. Yeah.
There were no shortage of people who bought them specifically to build the ships and put them on their shelves.
Yeah.
Never touched the game.
People still do that. Yeah, there's definitely collectors that don't play at all. That just
I've seen collections in people's houses that number in 2,000 or 3,000 ships, several of the same ones, just wall to wall, and
wow,
it's like wow.
Yeah,
they don't play at all. They have no interest in playing. They just like building the little ships.
Yep. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah. I don't have that many, but that's like cool. It's cool to display them. They look.
Yeah.
A lot of them are relatively accurate to Age of Sail stuff. So, and that's one of my favorite topics in history. So that's part of the reason I love the game. But
pirates are fun.
Yeah.
Pirates are always fun.
Are those people? Those weren't like WizKids employees that had like the wall-to-wall ships, right?
No. These are just collectors. These are just people who happen to love piratey stuff that I happen to know.
Yeah.
So it's not even like something might come up in a conversation where my wife would tell somebody, "Oh yeah, Tony worked on a game about pirates," and then I get into discussion with that woman's husband or something, find out he's got this big collection, and who knew that I knew this person who had ships from a game that I helped develop into what it became. And then he has no interest in the game at all. Even after that, I thought, "Do you want to play with him?" Nah. He had no interest. That is not a gamer in any way, shape, or form. And kind of like, oh man, that sucks, because this would be a great battle.
Yeah, really. Oh my god, yeah, 3,000 ships. That's absurd. Oh man. Yeah, that's too bad. I've never quite fully understood that, but I mean, they do look really awesome, even if you don't use them.
They do, but I mean, after you have several of the same one, though, it's kind of compulsive at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, even up through that time, he was still buying them and putting them together. He just liked building the ships.
Yeah.
And then he just put it up there, and so all of his one-mast ships are in one shelf, and then another shelf had this 2-mast and 3-mast, and then the big Bauschelons. And
yep.
I mean, why do you need more than 2, 3, or 4 of those ships? I mean, he had dozens of Bauschelon kind of size ships. It's the big wall of them. Like, okay.
Yeah, and that gets expensive too, because you had to like redeem packs of South China Seas or whatever to get them. Mm-hmm. That'd be a lot of packs bought.
I gave him a lot.
Okay.
After I saw that, I still gave him a bunch of cards. Mm-hmm. That was one of my downfalls, is having too much pirate stuff, probably.
No, that's all right though. I mean,
but it is
for someone who worked on it, especially.
Yeah, I mean, I had boxes and boxes and boxes of unopened. There weren't packs. They were just I guess you call it a master set, where it has one of everything.
Yeah, factory set. Yep.
Factory sets.
Yep.
I'm not even quite sure why Mike kept sending them to me, but every other week I get another one, and I had dozens of these boxes.
Oh my god!
Of the same release, like Pirates Spanish Main. Like, oh yeah, do you need one of these? Not really, but you can send it, and you can send me 2, and so I have 2. There you go, 2 master sets on top of the 5 I already have.
Wow, and, that is epic.
So but I was like everybody's favorite person in our local game store community, because I'd show up and give everybody a lot of stuff.
Wow, that is awesome. Yeah, you're like a Santa Claus figure at the store.
Kind of.
Nice.
Yeah.
That is really cool, though. Yeah, you can make a pretty penny on those nowadays on eBay and whatnot.
Probably. I didn't. I think I've already told you I don't have any more at all. Zero.
Yep.
When I moved my store from Waynesboro to Hagerstown, I really wanted to pare down all of the. I'm going to call it junk. It's not junk, but it doesn't belong in my game store because I'm not selling it. So it was my stuff, and I just needed to get rid of it. So I found the people who were helping me that liked Pirates already, and said, that's what I would give them. I give them like 2 or 3 master sets, or big binders full of that this is a Pirates Spanish main set if you want it.
Yep.
And they loved it. Once we got moved in, they all played for days.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. Yep. So
Very
other
cool
than
to have it, very cool to share it.
yeah, other than what you've already talked about, what are some of your other favorite memories of Pirates CSG overall?
Probably just demoing it for people at the conventions. That was just so much. I love that part of it. I can't say there's any one part of the game itself I loved. I love moving the ships. I mean that was one of the coolest mechanisms in a miniatures game I've ever seen.
Yep.
Using the card as a measurement tool. Who would have thunk?
Yep. Yeah, that's really cool.
I remember there was one thing I had to do. I think with cannon fire and that die on the mast, and I started trying to make it more complex. And this is before it was released, and I said, "What do you think of this?" And I started coming up with all these crazy special die rolls and things, and Mike thought about it, and he just said, "Nah, we'll just use the D6." And I thought, and he just kind of looked at me and he said, "If it isn't broke, don't fix it. It works already that way." I guess so, yeah. But I love the simplicity of it. That's what it really draws me to that game, to share with other people. Is I can share that with a 5-year-old. I can share that with a 60-year-old, and they're going to understand it and be able to play it. Whether they like it or not, that's a whole different thing. But they will have no problems with understanding the game.
Yep. Awesome. Yeah, Mike Zelenker talked about how demoing the game and just hearing from the fans was one of his favorite parts about it too, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was a neat community. I dare say it was a different community from any of the other games. HeroClix and Mech Warrior and Mage Knight. Those, while their communities are fine and they're fun people, they're not always in it for fun. If you know what I mean. It's all about how can I min max this whole build of 3 or 4 pieces and win tournaments.
Yeah.
As opposed to what is cool, and what can I come up with that's fresh and unique and only mine.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's the thing I loved about it. And just the fact, when I had events at my store, I even had 4-year-olds playing, and not that they're good or anything, but they enjoyed it. There's one little girl, her name was Lucy. It's amazing that she's, just about now. She's going on 16 or 17 years old, I guess. Totally different young woman than she was with missing a tooth. And she only really wanted to play because her older brother played. But over time, he kind of lost track of it and didn't want to play. And then she would still come in. When she was 5 and 6 years old, she still wanted to play, even though her brother wasn't playing anymore. So I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, a lot of people get into it via family and siblings and stuff like that. And now it's like a whole new generation of potential Pirates CSG fans.
Yeah, someone's got to buy the rights to it and reprint the old sets and all the rest of it. I really don't think it would matter if the packs cost $6 or $7. People would still play.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yep. Do you remember any kind of prototypes that were around before Spanish Main came out in 2004 or sometime around that time?
Prototypes, you mean of the 3D ships?
Yeah, that.
I didn't see anything really.
Oh, okay.
No, all I got to play with is trading card kind of things. It was really hard for me to grasp what they were talking about.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I said, it's going to be a 3D model. And I said, but it's on a card. And they said, well, those little cards that you put together, little dinosaurs. And I knew what they were talking about, but I didn't see how that could become a ship.
Yep.
Because those little models, you don't bend anything. You just kind of, they're flat.
Yeah, the Z cards. Yep.
Yeah, the 3D cards. You don't bend anything to get into shape though. And now we have these pieces that look like ships because they're bowed along the sides and they look awesome. There's nothing like that. Even I don't know that the game would work if it didn't have that aspect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If it were just a booster pack like a WizKids HeroClix booster pack, and you open it up and you got a plastic ship, okay, they're cool, but I think putting them together was half the fun.
Yep.
And one of the things we used to do at conventions to show, because some people go, oh, that looks so brittle. You could throw it over your shoulder and let it hit the ground and say, no, see, it's not brittle. It's not going to break.
I agree. Some of the people, that's probably the biggest complaint. The brittleness and the fragility is probably the biggest complaint I've heard from people's least favorite aspect about the game. I think it's a lot of it comes down to experience. Like I've built probably around 800 ships total or more, and now I have no problem. But yeah, when people are starting out, sometimes it's tough not to break mass once in a while, things like that. So it's kind of this weird.
If you don't know how to wiggle them in, it's difficult.
Yeah, it's this weird kind of disparity between. They're actually, I feel like they're almost as strong as they could be for how thin the plastic is, but then people still, find them fragile. And yeah, I've dropped ships from 6 feet up, and they don't break on the floor. So yeah.
One of the weird things that happened, at least in one print run, if not a couple different sets. I was talking with one of the layout artists who lays out the cards. You're using it like a CAD program to do this, so you have very specific widths for those holes to be punched, so that the card fits in there snug. And those holes either shrank or got bigger at the printer in China. The company that would make them.
Yeah.
And I was always kind of, I'm not a person to have any kind of conspiracy theories or whatever, but I thought it was awful weird that these numbers would get changed before final, printing of these things. So there were several times, at least once or twice anyways, that a whole shipment came in and were totally useless because the holes were too big or too small.
Oh.
And I thought that was weird. I thought, how'd that happen? And the guy said, I don't know, because we sent him this file and it's, it's a spec. I don't know. They had to go in there and physically change numbers.
Yeah. Yeah, that's weird. Yeah, I've noticed some sets are a little bit harder to put together the ships than others. Sometimes the slots are a little tight, but yeah. And once in a great while, I'll get a ship. El Neptuno was one recently for me where it's brand new, and then I punch the mass out, and the mass just fall out when you flip the ship upside down in the air. All the mass just fall out randomly. So it's almost impossible to play with because a lot of times with 5-masters like that ship, I try to pick them up by the stern gaff mast at the back, and but if I try to do that, the mast comes out and the ship just stays there. I'm like, oh well, I guess not. So. But that's from Crimson Coast, the second set, and I don't think I have any other ships from Crimson Coast that are that loose, so it's just kind of a random one.
It is kind of random, hit or miss, and I'm not sure what happens. Maybe the die gets wore out, possibly.
Yeah.
The cutting die.
Yep.
But we used to, before we would play in our events on weekends, we'd run events on Saturdays and Sundays with all these young players, and I had I guess it was like a tune-up period where people could bring their stuff that they were having problems getting in, or they wouldn't stay. Where if it was too tight, I would shave off with an X-Acto knife a little bit off the mast until it fit. So I would work on everybody's ships before we started, and kind of show them what I'm doing to make them work. And they all figure it out eventually, but they're still one of the coolest game pieces of any game I've ever come across.
Yeah. Yeah, I love how you can remove the mast and mark damage and stuff, because then I like to take them out and leave them out, because then you can have debris on the ocean, which makes it look like a real naval battle for Age of Sail with all the debris and carnage and whatnot. So, Yep.
When we'd have ships sink, we would remove one of the sides so that it would kind of be tipped on its side.
Yep.
Leave the last mast in, but on its side it's like a wreck.
Yeah, I like that too. Yep.
Just adds to the fun.
Yeah, I like that too. Especially, the real shipwrecks on the reefs. Usually when they sink, I remove them just so they don't get in the way when they're, below the surface. But I still like that. And it's the type of thing where it goes back to the house rules where I've made custom shipwrecks where I think I had a Duke from Crimson Coast where the laser cut or the die didn't punch all the way through on the ship's deck on the, the first card. So to get it out, I had to kind of attack it basically with a utility knife just to get it out. And by that point, it was ruined. So then I turned it into a custom shipwreck though, which is featured in a lot of my games. So I glued it to a reef piece, and it's fun because then you can put gold. I put some gold paint on the stern of the ship to show that gold's leaking out of the shipwreck, and then I put coins on the reef. Yeah, and then ships, but then it's kind of like a double-edged sword because then ships have to roll for reef damage to get to the gold on the shipwreck. So it's a fun way. Even when the stuff comes in weird, you can still, either use the pieces for repairs, an extra ship could be used as spare masts, or you could make custom shipwrecks. Some people make custom ships where they actually they use marker to change the dies D6s on the mast, or they change the ship design and stuff like that. People have talked about using stickers over the artwork to make custom ships. So there's endless stuff you can do with almost all aspects of the game.
Yeah, we kind of did that with our RPG game with respect to I'll just say a little bit about it. I started everybody. I killed off the big game because it was just getting out of hand, and I retooled it and said, you all have one mast ship, and you're the captain. So I gave them a captain, basically a blank captain crew card that they put in their information, and they could buy their stats with a certain number of gold pieces, and then whatever they had left, they could put into giving their ship extra stuff. Then they had to go explore to do all the rest of it, to build up their gold supply so that they could buy a bigger ship and hire that better gunman and this helmsman or whatever. And it was a really cool thing to start that way. But having the cards that we could customize was a really neat way to make the game just that much more expansive. Not just, so you got that really rare ship that nobody else has and it's way better. You want that ship, you're going to have to pay for it, basically.
Yeah.
With, the gold points.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds exactly like a lot of the campaign games that I've played where you spend gold that you get along the way for new ships and crew. So, yeah, that's one of my favorite ways to play in general.
A little bit Mordheim-esque. That's a lot of my stuff came out of that. Playing Mordheim and upgrading your army and your characters. So yeah, cool stuff.
Yep, absolutely. Do you remember some of the weird promos that came out when you were still involved in the game? There was one, Donald Duck magazine from in Scandinavia that had these special islands that you couldn't get anywhere else, for example, and they're still super rare to this day.
I never saw those or heard about those.
Yeah, there's some weird stuff out there.
I'm sure.
And there's
I did have a customer bring in. It was, I think it was only made for big box stores. It was almost like a board game-esque version of Pirates. And I couldn't find it anywhere. The place where he found it was at Ollie's, which is like a one of these big lots kind of companies. They buy out, pallets of crap and they put it in their store. And he got this thing for, I don't know, $3 or $4. But it had 5 ships and it had a roll-up mat that you could play on. It was pretty cool.
That sounds like the Quest for Davy Jones Gold board game, maybe.
Yeah, no, it was very similar, but it wasn't that. It was something else. And
interesting.
I've seen some weird stuff, but I mean, that might be the most bizarre thing I had seen. It wasn't, they had really dumbed down the rules a lot more than normal.
Yeah.
And so all I could think is that they were trying to go really, really, push it out to, I don't know, KB Toys maybe. I don't know.
Yep. Yeah.
When you're doing this kind of work and you kind of, I wasn't in it for the promos, but we would get one of everything. But I think promos like the ones you're talking about probably weren't even available to the WizKids personnel, really.
Yeah.
They were probably just given the rights to do it or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that makes sense.
Sad. I missed out on a lot of stuff. I had some really cool island pieces that people would make and send me. I probably still have those somewhere. Those were really nice.
Yep.
Like wood base and foam rocks and everything, and little lighthouses.
Nice.
Yeah,
I made some custom islands. It's pretty fun to once you get to use them in games. And yeah, somebody actually, somebody from the community of Ixanish Coder 66, he actually made some custom lighthouse rules a couple of years ago, or maybe in 2018. So yeah, and I tried them out. Or it must have been, yeah, it was at least 2 years ago because I tried them out in a 2017 game. So yeah, it's just endless what you can do with it. It's awesome.
Well, I'm looking forward to taking a peek at the community you have, more than I've had a chance to. I'm so glad that you found me.
Yeah.
I had no idea that there was still a community. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's actually funny because I think the person who Jeremiah he was the one who created the lighthouse rules. He was actually he was the one who asked me in the podcast thread on my site about trying to get some of the former WizKids employees and whatnot on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd already thought about that and kind of written down, an idea about starting that, but that was kind of what kicked me into gear in terms of that. And it started this year with James Ernest. So yeah, he's actually the one to thank sort of to a degree for that. And yeah, I think your name was just. I think sometimes in the past, Woelf mentioned Piranha, and then Tony Vigil along with it. As far back as Miniature Trading, which was the main site for Pirates CSG.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, but that closed down in July 1st this year. But anyway, so
sad.
Yeah, yep. And speaking of sad, did you know about the Return to Savage Shore set that had been planned but not released? I don't know if you were out of the game at that point though.
I knew I knew it was a thing on the schedule. I didn't know anything about whether it was going to finally get done or not.
Yeah.
They went long. Like I said, I think it was supposed to be 3 or 4 sets max. They had planned out. There's a storyline behind the whole thing.
Yep.
I don't know if they ever wrote it out and sold it or anything, but they did have a story, and it was supposed to play out over those 4 sets. And then that was the thing. I mean, they didn't know what to do with it because it was selling like crazy, but it wasn't selling like their other products. They didn't know what people were doing with it or why it was selling. There were no metrics.
Yeah.
And but after the 4th set, they said, well, I guess we'll do another couple. And then they started coming out with other stuff, and it just kept steamrolling.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was good stuff though. I mean, I enjoyed it while I was there. I really liked having it in the store. If it came back out, I would carry it, day one for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I talked with Jason Michael on one of the podcasts who did a lot of the flavor text for the game. And yeah,
cool.
There were lore storylines that would span multiple sets. A lot of the named crew came back and had, between 2 and 4 or 5 versions each. So yeah, there was a lot of fun continuity with the lore. So, and some people have expanded on that where they make even later versions of the same crew. Like Calico Cat might be in a custom set where she has brand new abilities. So, and then people can kind of take the WizKids flavor text and then expand on that, extend the storyline, if you will, in their own little way. So, yeah.
Still one name character per ship.
No, that was just for the links. I mean, the linking rules get a little weird with that. Like some crew have multiple links, like to a ship and then another crew, or to multiple ships, but not too often, really.
Yeah.
I've made a lot of customs with links, but I don't usually do go too crazy with the links themselves usually.
Yeah.
So how did you feel about the game, quote unquote, sinking before Return to Savage Shores came out? If you were
What
reading
you
about
mean
it at the time.
sinking? You mean in terms of it just
Like,
falling apart? Kind
yeah,
of.
just going out of print in 2008 in general.
I, it was very sad. I mean, like I said, I could sell that every day of the week if they gave it to us to sell.
Yep.
I don't even need new sets. You can reprint Spanish Main all day long. I like that set a lot.
Me too.
Any one of those sets is fun to play with. So, um, having all those Viking ships and Japanese junks and all kinds of cool ships is just so much fun to play with. I double the price. I don't care. I'll still sell it.
Yeah. Nice.
I know that for that $3.99 it just was becoming not doable. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially when you have people coming in saying, "Do you have any more Pirates in Spanish Main?" and you have to tell them no. That's just it's such a horrible feeling.
Yeah. That sucks. Yeah, people were getting some boxes at Walmart in like 2011, 2012. I've heard about some people getting some at Five Below stores in
Yep.
past years, but nowadays the physical packs you hear about people finding are almost always just at kind of like random thrift shops, not like chain stores, and then at conventions. Sometimes vendors actually have some at conventions.
Oh
But
yeah, no, I've seen them at conventions. I recently looked on eBay. There's and I haven't actually pulled the trigger. I don't know why I haven't. I mean, it's not that expensive. $25, free shipping, 5 packs, and you could get 5 packs of. I don't know. He had four or five of the sets that you could buy from, and I'm sure you could find it. It's just he hasn't fanned out 5 packs, and you just buy them that way.
yeah,
So $10, $50 for 10 packs. That's a lot of good ships.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So this board game, somebody was asking in the YouTube live comments about this Pirates board game. Um, was it like a custom build of Pirate CSG where they did house rules, or was it something else? If you
Yeah,
remember.
kind of. It wasn't. You didn't use the long and short. You moved on a grid. It was really dumb.
Huh.
But it had the ships though, and it
Yeah.
had the Pirates of the Spanish Main logo, and it was a strange box, and it was just kind of a bizarre. Uh, there were a few weird products that WizKids did. That, in fact, there were a couple that I found in stores, and I was a little bit annoyed that I didn't know about it. But I would contact my contacts at WizKids and say, "What's this?" And even they didn't know about it sometimes. Like, oh, well, I think I'll find out, and then maybe um, Tiffany or somebody else would tell me, oh yeah, that was a one-off project, by a side company using our blah blah whatever. We're just testing the market at Walmart. Oh, okay. And it doesn't go beyond that because it doesn't test well or whatever. Um, some of the things were interesting, some of them weren't.
Yeah. Interesting.
I think that one game board thing, it was just a last ditch milk as much as you could out of it kind of thing.
Okay. Huh.
Like I said, though, it was a bad game in the box. It wasn't really Pirates.
Yeah.
Not that we know it.
Yeah.
You
Exactly.
built up ships, but you put them on a grid, and it was kind of not much to it. Nothing to write home about.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That sounds kind of like the 2012 version that NECA WizKids came out with. The shuffling the deck card game that they released in 2012, where
Yeah,
they used like the
yeah,
Pirates of the Spanish Main logo, but then it wasn't. There was a completely different game. So I haven't
yeah.
even played it, but oh well.
No, I tried it very briefly, and I don't even want to. No,
Yeah,
just,
pretty much. Yeah.
yeah, it was a letdown. I was
Yep.
kind of hoping it was going to be a collectible trading card game, and it was nothing like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Very seemed like a very half-hearted effort. Like I'm not totally sure what they were thinking with that, but whatever. Didn't want to.
Well, I mean, one of the first pirate games I ever played was Seventh Sea trading card game. If you don't know what that is, you got to go find it if you're a Pirates type fan.
I've heard of it. Yep.
It's a cool game. I wish there was a way to mash up that part, some of those aspects with the Constructible game. But then I think like, well, Pirates of the Spanish Main as a game itself is a really, really good beer and pretzels game the way it is.
Yep.
With the ability to add whatever you want, add whatever flavor you want by making it more complex or adding your house rules. That's the best thing about it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Do you have a favorite ship type, such as like a submarine or a five-masted square rig ship, things like
The
that?
five-masted ship, the basic five-mast ship, is
Nice.
my favorite.
Same here.
Yeah. I think for me, I'm more. I just like having a lot of guns and a lot of health, I guess.
Yeah.
So big five-mast ships, I can make it faster with certain crew, and that's fast enough for me. There were some builds where people were using sloops to go all the way across the table in one turn. Ugh, I hated those kind of builds.
Okay.
But it is what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think those were my favorites for a lot of reasons. One, they looked really cool on the table. Two, the characteristics were more of my style of play. So, yeah, that's my favorite.
Yeah, I agree.
I like
Same here.
Multi-level. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. I think you would dislike some of the competitive play aspects because there's a ship from Pirates of the Caribbean called the High Peng, and with a captain and a helmsman, and then an extra action from somewhere else, you can move LSLS doubled, so LSLS plus LSLS.
Yeah.
Which moves you like the farthest distance you can move. So yeah.
Right.
It's crazy.
It's when you get those kind of builds, it's kind of like that's not in the spirit of. To me, it's not in the spirit of what the game's about. It's you've taken the fun out of it and turned it into chess, kind of in a way. It doesn't look fun to watch. It doesn't look fun to play against. I don't think it would be fun to play either. I would rather get into battles where you have to fire at ships.
Yeah.
And that was a house rule that we implemented. You couldn't just go get gold. You had to interact with other players. Before you went to an island, you had to confront another ship.
Yep.
So I got rid of a lot of those builds that were only about speed and no guns.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I've done something somewhat similar where instead of having the person with the most gold at the end of the game win the game, you do points in play. So you count up all the points that your fleet totals. So then that incentivizes people to try to capture enemy ships to increase their total.
Did the exact same thing.
Nice.
We turned gold into a tiebreaker for the most part.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, sometimes. No, you go ahead.
At one point, I got rid of those little gold coins altogether. So nothing was on the islands. You had to roll a die to see what you got. I had a table. And I didn't have it filled in all the way. And one kid, he got to an island, so I had him roll the D20, and he got a 20. And I was like, oh, that must be cool. And I didn't have anything written down yet for that. I didn't know how much to give him. Because I wasn't using the little gold coins. I was using little trinkets, little beads, and little... It was more about having cool stuff rather than points.
Yep.
Because they didn't care about the points. They just wanted to have, a big treasure chest full of little gold beads and silver beads and diamonds and rubies and things. And so he rolled this D20, he got a 20, and I didn't have anything picked out yet, and all the kids were really excited. So I said, oh, okay, you have to roll it again. He got another 20, and they got really excited. So I had him roll it again. He got another 20, and I don't know why I bought this thing in the first place, but it was like a 4-inch diamond, clear diamond acrylic thing. It was a 3D diamond. So I just go, here you go. Boom. I handed it to him. And he started showing it off to all the other kids, and they were like all excited. But that's really what started the whole RPG thing. He came back the next week, and he was still bragging about it. And so I told everybody that the Queen of Spain's diamond was stolen, and she wants it back, and she wants the person who stole it captured. And they're like, well, what does that mean? I said, well, he has it, so he must have stole it, so you need to capture him. So they're all running after him all over the table.
Nice.
And he's like, can I just drop it in the water? I said, nope, you can't drop it in the water. It'll just bounce back on your ship. And so, basically I just taught him a lesson about showing off all his swag to everybody else, in a bad sportsman-like way. But he spent the whole day hiding from everybody, running away, not doing anything but running, and everybody was after him. So, there's so many fun things you can do with this game.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, it's endless. Yeah, I would say sometimes the hyper competitive builds can be fun, but usually only when you're playing against other super competitive fleets. Like Xerix and I had a lot of fun in Vassal Tournament number 2. Vassal's a way to play online using the Vassal module, and this was like a lot of it was in 2017. So in Tournament number 2, we had basically the best fleets ever that we could find, at least pitted against each other, and eventually, I think the last 4 fleets almost all used the same strategy with like these really overpowered game pieces. It was still fun, but then by the end of it, we were ready to go back to our campaign games where we have like huge wars and stuff like that. So it can be fun for a while to do hyper competitive, but eventually it does almost seem like a chess match because like you're waiting to see what the other person does with their hidden cove event, which is really overpowered, and then you're trying to like maximize your gold score by any means necessary. So it can be fun, but kind of gets to you after a long while. So,
well, maybe the worst way to play is 1,000-point game. Don't ever do that.
I haven't done that one yet. I've done 500.
I tried it at a convention, and I had 8 people, so there were 8,000 points of ships at the table.
Oh my god!
It wasn't even. I don't know. It was good. It was dumb. That's what it was. Nobody went for gold. They just went for killing each other. And that's kind of what I was hoping is they interact, but they only interacted with the person standing right next to them.
Yeah,
because you can't. What are you going to do? You got somebody right next to you. Oh, I guess I'll shoot your ship.
Yep.
So, not a lot happened in the middle of the table.
Yeah, that is crazy. I mean, those fleets would be so big that you wouldn't be able to interact with all the players because they'd be so far away, and you'd have to. Yeah. That's crazy.
I think only one person had actual crew pieces.
Oh,
because all the ships, all the cards you have to have, and everything you have to keep track of. It was like, he's like, oh, forget it. I'm just going to go with a whole bunch of big point ships and have 40 ships. That's it. That's all I want.
Yeah, I mean, I love the bigger the better for me in terms of the games. But yeah, I played a handful or 3 games with 5 fleets of 500 points each in like 2011, 2012, and it was pretty fun. The second 2 couldn't match the first though. The first one was amazing. The gold scores were like, what was that?
2-player game?
No, I just played it by myself, but it was 5 fleets, and then each fleet was 500 points, so it was like 2,500 total. The first one was amazing because the gold scores at the end were like 48, 45, 43 between the top 3 fleets, so it came down to the wire. It was really awesome. But anyway.
Well, it's not as fun when you have 3 people with 500 points, or like I said, with 3 people with 1,000 points apiece, or 8 people with 1,000 points apiece. It's just not fun. You first of all, it takes forever to move everything, and then it just gets so loud, and you don't even know if it's your turn anymore. So after a while, people just start going. You're like, yeah, I'm just gonna go and move. Why not?
Oh god. Yeah.
It becomes a nightmare.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I like it because Xerix and I like it because the games are really epic and they take a long time. But that's kind of where you have to have you have to really spend a lot of time playing it. So that's not like a day game. That's like a weeks long campaign game where you play like 1 or 2 hours a day and then you come back a day or 2 later, stuff like that. So that's when it can become more
the cool thing, and this is on Vassal you're talking about, right?
Partly on Vassal. We've both done physical campaign games, but yeah, on Vassal it's awesome because you can save the game and then come back a month later. So yeah, Vassal's amazing, and then you don't have to like bend over and like move like 50 ships every turn per faction or whatever. So physically it's a lot easier because you're just sitting in a chair rather than on a floor or reaching over a table for like an hour or 2 hours straight. So and knocking stuff over, stuff like that. So yeah, Vassal has really optimized campaign gameplay, and Xerix and I have been involved in all 3, now 4. We have a 4th campaign game, CG4, going on right now,
cool.
and it's been a lot of fun. Yeah, Vassal campaign game 1 is amazing. I can send you the link to that. I mean, it takes a long time to read the battle reports. I'm rereading it right now, but it's just so epic. I just love the big epic stuff. So, yep,
Nice.
yep. Do you have a least favorite ship type?
Uh, Actually, probably the junks.
Okay, yep,
I don't know. I wanted to like them. No, I don't. I couldn't even tell you why. Really, I just don't.
yeah,
I
yeah.
just actually, I'm going to change my favorite ships to the Norse ships.
Okay.
Those models were my favorites.
Hmm.
I mean, I have a real soft spot for the five mast, typical 5 mast ship. That probably is my favorite. But second favorite would be the Norse ships. I just love the looks of those. But the Japanese ones I just didn't care for.
Yeah,
I wish I did. Oh,
yeah. I like them in general. I like the 6 and 10 masted junks. The big ones, those are awesome and fun to use. But the 2 masted junks from Ocean's Edge are wicked hard to put together. That's one
yeah.
reason
Well,
people don't like some of the junks.
I think that's why I don't like them.
Yeah, yeah,
To be honest, now you mentioned that, I think those were the ones that most of the players would bring them up to me. Can you put this together for me? And I have to do it, and
yeah.
my fingers would be really sore afterwards.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Ocean's Edge, especially OE 2 masted junks, trying to get basically the quarter deck or the extra deck at the
Hmm.
stern of the ship onto the little slots
Yeah.
that are suspended. They're not connected to the deck below, so it's
Right.
so easy to break them. And then the masts sometimes don't want to fit. So yeah. Oh, and
Yeah.
then you have to curve at the bow of the ship. You have to curve the deck up to fit the whole
Right.
pieces together. Yeah,
Yeah, but it's hard to curve that tiny little piece.
yeah.
I hadn't tried it. I've been thinking about it. There may be a way you could kind of warm it up, possibly to make it bend a little bit easier. I just
Oh,
don't.
good point.
Maybe in warm water, just to kind of soften it a little,
Yeah, possibly. Yep.
and then just drop it into cold water, and it'll kind of shock it into place, possibly. But
Interesting.
I never did it. I mean, well, at the store, it's not like I had hot water just sitting there. So
Yeah.
if I was at home, I could try it. And if I had stuff,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, usually I just move my fingers along it and keep working it until it's the right, angle that I want. So
yeah.
if you go too fast, it might look like almost looks like a crease or a bend rather than a nice,
Hmm.
curve. So anyway,
Oh yeah, I've ruined plenty of ships with slightly too much of a bend, and get that white
yes,
of seam sort of, and like, ugh.
yeah, yeah. That's getting into the nitty gritty details of like shipbuilding. I've noticed the 1 masted sloops are one of the ones you have to be careful with in terms of the hull curvature because if you curve them
Hmm.
too much, sometimes it'll stick out almost past the deck of the ship
Yeah.
and stuff like
Hmm.
that. So,
Yeah.
yep,
Oh, and I actually got pretty good at fixing masts for people too.
yep, yep.
Super glue and just packing tape across the bottom, and then cut it to fit, and then you do have to widen out the hole a little bit after that, but
Hmm.
usually it works for at least a while.
Yeah, yeah.
It's always a horrible feeling when you're putting the ship together the first time and you break a mast. It's like, oh crap,
Yeah, yeah. It's
that was
rough.
going to be such a fun one to use.
Yep. Yeah, I usually use tape to repair masts, and then one thing that somebody I taught actually, he actually had a great tip. This was somebody who was just learning pirates. He had a great tip where if you break a mast at the very bottom of the base,
Yeah.
you actually have room to take like an X-Acto or utility knife and cut like tiny triangles off that bottom part, and then it'll probably be skinny enough that cut part will be skinny enough to go back into the slot rather than being too wide. And the mast will be a little bit
Yeah.
shorter, but that's like a quick fix that you can use if if the
It
break
is.
is way at
It's
the
a quick
bottom.
fix. It
Yeah.
is a quick fix, but you also know that it's not as tall as it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, maybe nobody else does, but you know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very minute difference, but
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I think I've done that fix and kind of like, oh yeah, but it's still broken.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. I apologize if these have essentially been answered, but just for the sake of it, do you still
Yeah.
play
Nope.
Pirates nowadays? And what is your collection like? Yep.
I haven't played in, gosh, since probably 2000. 9, 10, or 11
Yep.
in the store. And my collection is 0. Not one single ship in my collection anymore. As I said, when we moved stores, I gave it all away to the people who helped move the store.
Mm-hmm.
So they got the bounty that they had to harvest the bounty that was given to me by WizKids, and that made them just so happy. And I got, I made out huge on that deal. The amount of work that was put into moving that store was not inconsequential.
Yep.
I threw away probably close to 500,000 Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I gave away, I want to say, about 100,000 Magic cards, bulk. And the pirate ships, I didn't want to throw them away, and I certainly didn't want them to. I don't know. I could have sold them, I suppose, on eBay or whatever. I just didn't. I felt like these people might like it better and not. So
Yeah.
I made it as a gift to them, and they loved it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's nice. That's really cool.
So
Yep.
I'm going to go back and buy those pirate ships that I saw on eBay now that I've had this conversation, because I miss it. I do.
Yeah.
Not going to lie.
Yeah, even just as like a nostalgic display piece, it's just kind of a fun thing to look at on a desk.
Yeah.
Even. Yeah. If
Well,
Pirate,
I look forward to playing it. I'm going to crack open all those packs and play them.
yeah, nice, love it. If Pirate CSG came back, would you want to return to it?
I would. I would come back to it in a heartbeat, as long as it's sticks to its roots of beer and pretzel play, with rules that are very malleable in a good way. Yeah, I would go back and play that again in a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I said, I could sell that in my store. Every other person that walks in, I could probably sell it to them. It's so easy and so inexpensive. And they're cool. I mean, they look neat. What kid doesn't want to put together a model of a ship?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I remember finding mine at like I think it was a Fi store. I think it was 2005 when Spanish Main was out, probably very soon before Crimson Coast came out. And yeah, I remember I was hooked pretty quick. Got 2 packs Spanish Main, and it was awesome.
Yeah, just the idea that you can buy 1 or 2 packs for 3 packs and have a decent group of ships to play with right there out of that, and have fun with it. It's you can't do that with a lot of games.
Yeah.
I think 5 packs is I think 5 packs is a good number for a draft.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, the good old days of $3.99.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I feel like, at least for me, that is sometimes. I mean, I'm pretty much just like Pirates, but it could be a barrier to entry to people where, a box board game could be $40, but, packs of Pirates, they could get 3 for $12, or that same $40 could buy them 10 packs, which is 20 ships. So, yeah, that price point is just awesome to even think about for all the stuff
Yeah,
that they
well,
got back.
I I use that all the time as a sales thing. Yeah, I always liken things to movies. When families go out to movies or whatever, I'll explain to the dad or the mom. Um, they could buy each of the 3 kids 2 packs apiece, and they'll have all these ships and 2 or 3 ships, and they get to build them and they get to play with them. And you open up a pack right in front of them, put the models together, and that usually is what sells it. Once they see the 3D model come out of that pack, it almost doesn't matter how good the game is. I mean, the kids are just hooked. And when you show them how to play, they think, oh, this is awesome. I get to sail a ship and fire cannons and get gold.
Mm-hmm.
It's just neat. I mean, there's no two ways about it.
Yep. Yeah, it's just that classic lure of the age of sail and life on the high seas and whatnot. Yep.
Yeah.
If you want to talk
Well,
about it, what are you doing now?
I own a game store in Hagerstown, Maryland called Neverland Games. Uh, we've been in business since 2008, and our store has grown from a 1,500 square foot store to about 6,000 square feet.
Nice.
Got a wonderful community, and I'm just so lucky to have such a wonderful group of people that call Neverland Games their home.
Hmm.
It's just really cool,
Yep.
and
That's awesome.
I can't get this kind of audience in many other venues. I've owned a bar before, and while I enjoyed my patronage, just doesn't compare to the gaming community.
Yep.
I think in a way most of us are introverts and otherwise awkward, and this is the place where people can be themselves and not feel out of place.
Mhm. Yep. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Alrighty, let me see. Where can people find you online?
Facebook.
Yep.
Um, yeah. Please feel free to say hi. You can either uh, find me by way of Neverland Games or find me on Facebook. It's Tony Vigil, Vigil. Um, there's a couple of that. My dad has one. I'm the one with the handlebar mustache. Uh, but yeah, um, always happy to talk to people about pirates. And like I said, I'm so happy you got a hold of me because it's kind of re-sparked that desire to play something like that again,
Yeah.
and
Awesome.
get my RPG rules into a printable shape.
Yeah. No, that's great to hear. Yeah, I've got the Neverland Games site up right now, and it reminds me of going to game stores as a kid, like as a little kid with pretty much no money, and just seeing the quantity of boxes. Because I was into Pokemon Yu-Gi-Oh when I started
Yeah,
getting into Pirates, and it's just I'm seeing a few pictures on the site now, and it's just overwhelming to think about like the amount of product that gets moved. And the
yeah.
thing that would
There's no
freak me
shortage
out.
of games, huh?
Yeah, that's if I owned a game store, I think I'd get in trouble because I'd want to open all the Pokemon packs. Uh, oh well.
I off topic. I did a bad thing once. I was thinking about buying a game store from my friend, and he went away for a couple weeks and left me in charge of it. And I was like, cool. And there was a game called Clout. I don't know if you remember that game. There were like little poker chips that had each poker chip was a unit in your army, and you threw them into the battlefield, and their range. The cool thing about the game was if I was a better chip thrower than you, my range could be 1 inch or 1 unit equals 1 inch, where yours could be like 1 unit equals 4 inches. So you could handicap it. Anyway, it was a cool game. They had booster packs that had 2 poker chips in them, and the new set was coming out, and I was very excited about it. And I heard that the boxes were mapped. That the really good poker, the one that everybody wanted, the dragon chip, was like third down on the right side or something like that. And I saw all these boxes there, and I thought, I wonder if that's true. So I opened up one box and popped open that pack, and there it was,
Yep.
$25 chip. Then I wonder if it's true in the next box. I did that one, and there it was. So I opened up all 6 boxes and opened up one pack in every box, and it was that one. So like, oh crap! Now what do I do?
Yeah.
So I had to buy it all because now I ruined all 6 boxes. Because almost immediately, once I opened the store, I had people waiting in line saying, "I want to buy out of an unopened box." And I said, "They're all open." And I was like, "Wait, my what?" I said, "Yeah, I opened them. And I pulled out the dragon chips." And I now I have to deal with it as the owner now. And so what we do is we shuffle the boxes. We'll take 4 boxes and shuffle everything and put, the booster box quantity back in that box. But they're completely randomized that way.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense.
And it means that no one box is necessarily dead. But
Yeah.
yeah, opening packs can be a hazard. When you own a store, though, it becomes less of a hazard. It's kind of like owning a candy shop. Probably after a while, you don't want to eat any more candy.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
You
Yeah, I see
know,
what you
like
mean. Yeah, you see it every day.
so.
Yep.
Yeah, it's there. I can do it whenever I want. And anymore, I only open up booster packs so I can make money off the expensive cards, for our stock.
Yeah.
And so I don't even care what's on the cards anymore. I used to love opening magic packs and going through every single card, excuse me, every single card, seeing what they do, what's the price point or the cost of the card, what's the picture, what's the player text, ooh, pretty, all that stuff. And now all I care about is it rare and is it worth money.
Yeah.
So that part of gaming is gone for me in a way. I hope there's a game that comes along that makes me feel that way again. But when you own a store, it's all about making the money and not so much about the hobby. That comes secondary. You lose your hobby when you own the store.
Yeah.
If it's your business.
That's one thing I've worried about with like restarting Pirates and whatnot. And I've thought about trying to get like, unless we get some kind of time machine or some kind of like nostalgic VR type thing, I'll never know. I'll never fully experience the joy of like opening my first Pirates packs. I kind of remember it, but it's so far gone now that like I've memorized those ship stats and I've used them a bunch in games, and it's like I still love it, but it's not always the same. So yeah.
It's and that maybe if I had one thing to say about my experience working as the rules arbitrator for as long as I did, I never had the nostalgia of opening packs.
Yeah.
Because I had them all. So it's kind of like,
I see what you mean. Yeah.
It's fun to open them still. You go, oh, cool! I did get the ship that I want for playing purposes or whatever. I like building the 5-mass ships, but it wasn't the same as other people who can look at it. Oh, cool! This rule is neat, or all that stuff is kind of didn't matter anymore.
Yeah, it's like muted over time through experience.
Yeah,
basically. Yeah. I've had similar as my collection has grown. I have most of the uncommon, common, and rare stuff in the game. So like I look at a pack of Ocean's Edge, and I basically know that there's nothing I can pull from that'll be new for me. So that makes it less tempting. But yeah. So that's kind of sad in a way, but it's still worth it because I've done a lot of great trades with the community members over the years to build up my collection. So it's cool. It's just a different vibe than 2011, 2012, 2013 when I was trading as much as possible and trying to get packs and stuff. So that's kind of inevitable when you collect things for a long time. So
yeah, well, you might get a little bit of nostalgia back if you ever play Sealed.
Yeah.
Because then it doesn't matter. I mean, who cares if you already have the stuff? You need them for that particular day and for that particular event.
Yep.
So that's when you can kind of relish the opening of the pack and hoping you get something good that's going to be fun to play with today.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Anything that you want to promote or give a shout out to?
Not at the moment, but oh gosh, if you ever feel like putting together a Pirates event at a convention and you want some help doing it, let me know. I'll help if I can.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great to hear.
Come up some way of getting some packs and running a sealed tournament or something would be so much fun in a lot of ways. So yeah, I'm kind of like I said, I'm glad you contacted me. I'm looking forward to being part of the community again in some form or fashion. I may not be visible in the sense that people will, oh yeah, that's Tony or that's Piranha or whatever, but I'll get into it the way I can.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and
cool.
Yeah, Woelf has made an account at my site at pirateswithben.com, so he's on the forum there. He's actually still answering rules questions in the thread he made there, so that's really cool. Okay. He's still active answering questions, so he's there pretty much every week, I would say, at least right now.
I'll see if I can't throw him a curve.
Yeah, and yeah, if you want to talk about the RPG at all here at then, feel free to, if you want.
Oh, you mean the one I was talking about?
Yeah, if you want.
Don't know what to really say about it. It's just something that kind of homebrewed out of playing with so many players at the table, and I think it's something that a lot of people would really enjoy playing. Like I said, I want to kind of get it into a printable fashion that I would like to try to sell it actually.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of fun. It takes a lot of the aspects of it uses the card movement, the L+S kind of movement. It doesn't have to, but it does. But I've thrown in a lot of those house rules that we talked about earlier to make it more interesting. It's not just about coming over there and saddling up to my ship and firing at me. You have to spot my ship. Those kind of things make it really interesting. And then having ports that aren't friendly to you, or or whatnot, and using cards for um, who goes when, and having those face cards mean something different. Like Mother Nature giving you weather effects and sea dragons and privateers, and that's the jacks, and then the kings. Would be the other countries that you just as a group playing a multiplayer game. You could just be the player on your left who controls the pirates, or the English ship that's next to your Spanish ship, and you just roll off,
Mm-hmm.
to see what happens. But I made it. I developed it in such a way that you never lose your ship. You just run away with your tail between your legs, and in a very beat up fashion, and you're gonna have to spend time repairing your ship.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all part of the RPG aspect, and making sure nobody's just out of the game.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, once you finish it or whatever,
Yeah.
I can definitely put it on the forum and whatnot because I would think there's Pirates CSG fans that would probably get enjoyment out of it.
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, nice.
So, yeah, I'll make sure to be part of that, and
Yep.
hopefully you'll see that sooner than later. I wouldn't say it'll be like tomorrow, but
Yeah.
maybe within 3 to 6 months I'll have something that's oh that I think is ready for viewing by other people.
Mm-hmm.
We're always our worst critics, but I don't want to put it out there until I know that it's I'm okay taking criticism for sure, and I'm all for that. I just want to make sure that most things are down. So yeah.
Yep, makes perfect sense. All right.
Cool.
So the last part of the podcast, each person has the opportunity to ask a question of the day to the audience. So I'll let you think about if you want to ask one. It's optional. And for mine, what is the most difficult rules situation you have come across while playing Pirates CSG? So that's a one I find really interesting because I actually do enjoy getting into the complex rules stuff. Mine would probably be a combination of abandoned crew along with the holy water UT, which is really wild. But anyway, the pirate code goes into detail on some of that craziness.
Yeah, it's been so long. I wouldn't even know how to answer that right now because it's been so long since I've actually built a fleet or anything.
Yep.
I think if I had a rule or a question to ask, I would ask, "What's your favorite house rule?"
Yep. Awesome.
I mean, I always like listening to what people come up with, and I am always amazed at how similar a lot of us think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm here talking about some of this stuff, and you're saying, "Oh yeah, we've done something like that," and we all think these things, and I always find it interesting what people think is a great house rule.
Yep. Nice.
So,
Yeah, mine
on
would
that
be.
note,
Yeah.
if for no other reason, I'm going to come check out that thread, see what people say.
Yep. Awesome. Very cool. Yeah, I'll try to make a note of that. And yeah, mine would be probably the 2 hits per mast rule, which was on some ships like El Corazado. But
Yeah,
I just love how that one makes the game more realistic and also allows ships to come back after repairing in the same game. Because without that rule, a lot of ships just sink very quickly in battle, which is not realistic to the Age of Sail, and then they're done for the game. So that allows them to have more durability, and it makes it more of an Age of Sail themed game than just like run and gun and the game's over, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So
yeah. One thing we tried, it didn't work out great. Probably need to be fine tuned. Every ship had, well, whatever the cost of the whole ship, including the crew, that's how many points you had to think. You had to hit it that many times, basically.
yep, nice.
So it wasn't a matter of, I mean, if you had a 30-point ship, for example, and you had 5 masts, each mast took 6 to remove.
Yep. Wow. Yeah, that's pretty intense.
So yeah, it becomes much more of a, more realistic slog fest. A lot of back and forth, a lot of volleys.
Yep.
And that's when it gets interesting. I think when you have those kind of, I don't like the ones where it's just you come over there with your 5-mast ship and just take apart my 3-mast ship in one die roll. Like, oh, okay, I guess that was it. 4 shots, done.
Yeah, I know. And then your favorite ship is sunk without it getting into action, which is lame and makes you feel sad about the game.
So that's why I like doing concurrent die rolls. Just because you remove 2 of my mass, I still get to fire with them this round, kind of thing. So, having the battle happen simultaneously makes a lot more sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing worse than getting your ship destroyed on the first turn by somebody who just sails right across the table and destroys your ship.
Exactly.
With their first action.
Yep.
It's just yuck.
Yeah, and I've had that happen many times. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The worst is when you've got home islands that are close together, and then you don't know how aggressive your opponent will be. You go first, thinking, okay, maybe they won't attack me, or hopefully it won't. And then I've had players just like brutally come over and attack my fleet, which is totally fair and fine. But sometimes it makes the rest of the game kind of boring when you take out all of an opponent's gunships, and then they can't do much the rest of the way. But,
right.
Yeah.
And I know that's a strategy.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean I like that kind of strategy.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Cool.
Thanks so much again for coming on. This was an awesome talk.
Thanks for having me. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I look forward to seeing what else comes out on your site. I'm going to be at bare minimum lurking, but I'll probably, pipe up here and there.
Yeah, hopefully make an account, talk to Woelf, stuff like that, get some new rules questions going maybe.
I will.
Yeah.
Will do.
Sounds awesome. All right, thanks again, everybody,
like
for listening.
I'm definitely going to I do. Yeah, I do want to see what people's favorite house rules are, though. That'd be very interesting to me.
Yep, awesome. Yep, thanks everybody again for listening, and we'll be back later with more podcasts.